Phrasing is kind of a hard concept to teach, especially over video, so I hope you'll bear with me. I'm going to try and explain this in the best way that I know how, but it's kind of tricky. So phrasing is very similar. You hear that voice crack? So phrasing, it happened twice. So phrasing is very similar to the way that we speak. The best comparison you can make is the way that you say sentences, and with the inflection that you say it, and the speed that you say certain words at, and the emphasis that you put on certain words. All of that is combined into the phrasing of the sentence. One of the main things that separates like mediocre musicians and musicians that really are incredible is their knowledge of how to phrase. So I'm going to play a melody and I'm not going to phrase it at all. I'm just going to play it as written, no extra stuff. And then we're going to talk about how maybe we could look at it and phrase it. So I didn't play with any dynamics. I didn't play with any vibrato. I didn't play with any emphasis on any notes, and it made it sound really plain and boring. Now, what happens if I add some phrasing? Now, besides my eyebrows adding a lot of expressive value, I also played with time a lot more, and I emphasized certain notes in the phrase, and I used vibrato, and those three things made the melody a lot more interesting than it was the first time. So let's talk about how I made some of these decisions. The first thing about phrasing that I want to teach you guys is just about identifying what the phrase is. How do I know where my sentence ends? I'm going to play through this one more time, and I'm going to stop with larger pauses at the ends of these sentences. Now it's all about listening and deciding, does this sound like it concluded? I very well could have stopped twice more halfway through each phrase because there's a rest written in, and I could have identified that as a phrase. But that sounds like it doesn't end. It just you're kind of like, what next? Well, what's next is... Even that doesn't feel like it ends completely, but we gotta breathe somewhere, right? A part of determining phrasing is, what are you capable of? Are you capable of making it all the way through? Well, no, I'm not. So I do have to break up the phrase. And that seems like the best place to do it. You want to be careful not to have your phrases be too short. A prime example of this is Mary Had a Little Lamb. All of those phrases are way too short. We could combine it to be this. Now it's all one phrase, and I feel like I'm talking in complete sentences instead of Mary had a little lamb, a little lamb, a little lamb. Now it's Mary had a little lamb, little lamb, little lamb. I would rather listen to that second sentence. So it really comes down to playing your music as if you're speaking it. Sing through your melody and see, okay, does it feel like this thought, this musical idea, ends here, or could it keep going? Am I able to keep going? What happens if I continue the phrase? And that is really, really the epitome of how this works. You just have to try. You have to try, what happens if I do this phrase length? What happens if I shorten the phrase to be this much? How long do you want your sentence to be? You have to kind of experiment with different ways and decide what works best for you. Because ultimately, music is subjective. So you might think it should be phrased one way, and I might think it should be phrased another. But it ultimately comes down to, what are you trying to communicate with that musical phrase? And is it best communicated in a short phrase or in a long phrase? So that's the basics of phrasing. Just treating music like you're reading an essay and getting every musical sentence to sound exactly like it needs to sound. Let me know if you have questions. This is kind of an abstract concept, so normally I would have the pleasure of teaching you in class and we would do a bunch of experimenting, but we don't have that capability. So if you need help on this, I won't blame you, because it's weird. See you later.